We are rolling.
Good morning. Welcome back to the conversation. This is Pointing Out the Obvious. This is our news and politics webcast, our daily take on what's buzzing today. I'm your host, Patrick Russell, and over there, where she belongs, is my very opinionated producer, Veronica. Together, we're here to quip and quiver through today's headlines, searching for the real, no matter how deep in the swamp we need to go. Happy Hump Wednesday to you, Veronica. I've got a very interesting story out of Oklahoma to talk about. You know, we've been following the opioid crisis across America, even watching some TV shows that are reflecting just what challenges the government as well as families of loved ones who have been hooked on drugs like Oxycontin being the main culprit, and seeing how it changes their lives, that the addictive nature of the drug is completely apparent, and how it destroys not only their lives, but the lives of the ones that love them. So Oklahoma State, surprisingly, has thrown out a $465 million settlement against the drug makers of Oxycontin, stating that the drug makers are right, that the complaint that has been successfully brought against the drug makers, this public nuisance complaint that has been so far, up until a couple of weeks ago in California, successful in winning multi-million-dollar settlements across the United States. But last week or 2 weeks ago, California being the first state to throw out the case against the drug makers, stating that they're right, that what the government or what the state attorney general is bringing to bear as their evidence as a public nuisance doesn't quite reach the threshold of what a public nuisance is supposed to be. I mean, their statement is that a public nuisance is supposed to be dealing with noise complaints and things that happen every once in a while, not public policy. And so now this has turned the legal approach from all states now all on their ear. Now all settlements and all cases that are currently going through the court system are going to have to contend with a judge that might agree with what the Oklahoma State judges. The Supreme Court went to the highest court of the state. And of course, what we found out from the California, I believe it was the Supreme Court of the state, have decided that you guys have to come with a different way. Now, the analogy that I come up with, Veronica, is that when you take down Al Capone, sometimes you can't take Al Capone down for murder.
Yeah.
You got to take him down for tax evasion, right? You got to take him down for a technicality, and that's exactly what happened here. Mm-hmm. You couldn't pin murder on these drug companies, even though that they were making billions of dollars over the course of a decade on a product that has been scientifically proven to be addictive, rewires the chemistry in your brain. It's so addictive. And the fact that they were able to discover how it was producing a criminal element across the United States that was undeniable. It was charges being brought from the pharmacists seeing things that they didn't like, but keeping quiet about it. The GPs seeing the addictive qualities and symptoms, but keeping quiet about it, at least keeping quiet. Some were keeping quiet about it. I mean, there were obviously advocates that were seeing what was going on and were raising the alarms to no effect for a very long time. So now we have a situation where, okay, tax evasion or that technicality of public nuisance may not work in every single trial against the drug companies. But now, from a younger generation's perspective, I got to ask you, in any way, do you think it is what the drug companies are asserting, that it is the individuals, it is the over-abuse from the victims and the addicts themselves that should be blamed for the opioid crisis in America, and not the fact that these corporate giants were willingly negligent and willingly ignorant of the killing product, the deadly product that they were spreading so easily across the pharmacies, Walgreens and CVS's and the local mom and pop pharmacies across America? How do you see it? Do you see it's totally a liability of the corporate giants, or do you see it as an individual addicts liability and fault? Whose fault is it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in this case, I believe that the intelligence people, the people that prescribes the medicine, they're the ones that are supposed to be in control. So if they knew that 10 years ago it was making these effects, it was affecting people, and they didn't do anything, that's because the money's there. And I believe that they needed to look into that more and prevent all this death from happening. So, I mean, but let's face it, were they going to do that? I mean, they were going to lose a lot of money.
So let me ask you again, from a younger generation's perspective, how much fault do you put on the individual, on the addict? What liability and fault should they shoulder themselves, if any?
I mean, I guess this situation is case by case. Like if someone was prescribed 10 pills and then they took like 5 pills a day, obviously that's something that the personal individual makes something wrong, right? But it just general point of view, who prescribe the pills.
Right. The trust that you had with your doctor is what began this relationship between you and this very deadly pill.
Yeah. So, I went to see my mom, and just to kind of give you an example, she's taking these pills for high pressure, right?
High blood pressure.
Yeah. So my mom is like, oh, they told me that instead of a 10 to take a 5. So my mom will be responsible if she doesn't follow the instructions, right?
Right.
But in this case, whatever pill she's taking, we have to blame whoever made it, right? So not my mom, because she's following the steps. Now, who made the pill? I don't know what the pill is about. I don't know what ingredients the pill has on it, right? So,
well, final note. So we've always been an advocate of following the money, following that money trail when you're trying to get down to the truth of an issue, right? So what you brought up is exactly the heart of the issue. A public trust was egregiously violated, right? First, it came down from the individual, from the trust to the doctor or the pharmacist, but it was also the trust from the doctors and the pharmacists to the drug companies, or I should say the FDA, the government regulator, that provided this very special and, dare I say, lucrative government safety label that suggested Oxycontin was non-addictive and was safe as prescribed. That public trust was created by an individual at the FDA that relied on studies and clinical notes that turned out to be purposely misleading and therefore wrong. Further going, the public trust was also violated by the FDA, the person that was in charge of the FDA and granted this very lucrative label of safe and non-addictiveness, left the FDA agency shortly thereafter to join the pharmaceutical company that was making said drug that received the lucrative label, Oxycontin, and Purdue Pharma. Literally left the agency after he gave this stamp of approval from the FDA to go to work as a VIP of pharmaceuticals. Now, I don't know any bigger example of quid pro quo and a self-serving scheme that was completely based on lies. And if the scheme itself is based on lies, well, the fruit of that tree obviously needs to be taken into account. Whatever fruit of that tree that you may have prospered from, drug companies, they should be punished for like kind, I think is going to be the rationale moving forward by a lot of state agencies, even though they will have to find another loophole technicality in order to take down these drug companies and get some money back to help with the recovery that this nation is going through in order to get their citizens and Americans off of the addiction of Oxycontin and generic drugs like it.
My question is, so they make a pill, right? And they get approved. Don't they have to follow up with like how people feel?
Absolutely.
And then I think that's kind of where it will be impossible almost, but don't they have this study where it says, okay, it's been 10 years, how are people feeling, and this is our studies?
Absolutely.
And then we can rely on that and see how people feel at the time?
Of course. And what we're finding out is that the one lie has cascaded into a web of lies. all of their marketing material, all of the material that they use, not only to get their FDA approvals and their clinical tests passed, they were using it at their seminars and in their marketing campaigns and conferences to create a public trust that was based on the lie of trying to conceal the deadliness of Oxycontin and generic drugs like it. Now, here's final note. Regardless of what you want to peg onto the creators of Oxycontin, Purdue Pharma, that might be one question. But now, the second question that has to be raised and asked among the generic second-tier mass producers of the pain drug, they have very smart people that work there too.
Yeah.
They have their own chemical analysis, and do you think that they're going to put something on the street unless they know exactly what it's going to do to the people? Everybody hid behind that FDA safety label,
Stamp.
willingly playing ignorant to the fact that their pill was not only addictive, but it was the hottest, sweetest high that was driving the black market of the drug trade since, its inception back in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
So everything pointed back to Purdue Pharma, and the production of Oxycontin based on this umbrella protection from the government that turned out to be a lie. Guys, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but there is your opinion. Don't just subscribe to this channel, even though we'll be doing this back and forth on a daily basis, but lend your voice to the show. It'll make it a whole lot more fun. Guys, remember, it doesn't matter if you lean to the right. It doesn't matter if you lean to the left. As long as you're treating the person in front of you kindly, you just made the world a better place. Happy Hump Wednesday, everybody.